Hello and happy Thursday. I had an interesting scenario with a customer this week who are trying to automate their certificate management using ServiceNow and a series of PowerShell scripts. Um, what it boils down to is they have a PowerShell script that will send out a request to a server within their infrastructure, and that server will generate a new license key file. This license key file is essentially a binary file, not just plain text. So it's difficult to move it. They were having trouble trying to get from the target server back into ServiceNow to attach that file, that binary file, to their certificate record. So what we came up with, and I thought this was interesting, and I don't have certificate files handy, but I do have a binary file, this little guy. He is my test binary file. So what I need to do is, through a PowerShell script, I need to retrieve this file, and through a flow, I need to get that back onto a target record. I need to move this back to ServiceNow. So if we look at the flow, what we've ultimately got here is a PowerShell step. This is part of the integration hub. I believe it's the professional version or above. And what this is doing, this is going to remote to this Windows server. That was the server that I'd shown here with this happy little guy. And it needs to retrieve the file and bring it back into ServiceNow. So whenever you're trying to move a file in this way, in integrations, in these PowerShell scripts, a nice way to do it, if it's available, is to convert that binary file into a Base64 string. This, kind of gets rid of all of those characters that don't necessarily translate well in integrations. Ideally we need to convert them to a string that's safe to be transported. So a little Googling, we found that PowerShell does natively have a to-Base64 string. This allows us to convert the data into a format that can be transmitted as plain text. And then from there, we can take the output. You can see here on the PowerShell script that we're writing the results of this conversion as the output of the PowerShell step. Now, when we go into the ServiceNow script, we added a script step that takes the Base64 file, and this is the output of the PowerShell step, and then we can take that and use the ServiceNow attachment API, the GlideSys attachment. This is a scoped API, and uses the write Base64, which will reconvert that string back into a binary type file. Okay, so we have the file name, we have the content type. This could be provided from the PowerShell step, but I've hard-coded it here just for the demo. And what I want to do is I'm going to write the results of this to a ServiceNow record. And I'm going to choose this incident here for the sake of simplicity. So if I run this and test it, I'm going to provide the record ID that I want the file to go back to. And we will test the script, and then we'll walk through the steps. So now this is running. In the background, ServiceNow is communicating out to a mid server that I have installed. And it is running the action on the target server. So it's trying to pick up this file, find the file on the file path, convert it to Base64, and then it's going to return that as an output of the PowerShell script. So if we start looking through the steps, you can see the different steps of the flow, or the action rather. And in this PowerShell step, what we can see is that the output, rather than a binary file, is this big string. So this big string doesn't mean a whole lot just by looking at it. But in the next step, we're taking that input, that Base64 file, and again using the glide write Base64 to reconvert that back into a binary. And then what we have is our happy little guy, our happy little binary file, back on the ServiceNow record. And what this is going to enable them to do is take the new certificate that's been generated by the external certificate authority, write it back to their certificate record, and then have another step that will essentially do the same thing in reverse, convert it to a Base64 string, pass that on to the next PowerShell script to deliver it to the target server, where it will re-encode it as binary and update the certificate. So that's all there is to that. I thought it was interesting. Base64 is your friend in integrations, wherever you're needing to sort of pass these types of files to and fro. One thing you do want to keep in mind when you are getting a ServiceNow file from, on the ServiceNow system, there is a limit of 5 megabytes files to convert into a Base64 string on the ServiceNow side. And this is done so it's not, holding big 30, 40, 50 megabyte files in the platform memory. So something to keep an eye out for. It's a 5 megabyte limit. It can be overridden with a system property, but not generally recommended if you can avoid it. All right, that's it. That was neat. It was interesting. I learned a lot about PowerShell and moving data. Enjoy. Have a good day.